Linder is a global events company that started as Rebecca Linder's vision for a new kind of event management company, one that moved beyond event production to provide creative strategy, knowledge, and leadership to turn an event blueprint into inspirational reality for each client. Learn more about Linder Global Events at linderglobal.com.
Are you a follower?
9, 8,
Okay, so we're gonna probably add.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here's your host, BizBash chairman and founder, David Adler.
Welcome to this edition of GatherGeeks. As the COVID virus pandemic is normalizing a bit, we are planning on releasing a minimum of 2 editions of GatherGeeks a month going forward. Today, we're going to be using a keynote session that I delivered earlier this week at the Untethered Conference. It is a mashup of leadership tips and survival strategies that could be helpful during this time, based on the lessons learned from Ernest Shackleton, who successfully saved and rescued his entire crew who were stranded in the Antarctic, with their ship getting trapped in the ice and sinking. Today, joining me is going to be Adrian Segar, who is one of the true innovators in our industry and the author of multiple books on gathering. He is a facilitator and an experienced designer who designs, facilitates, and convenes participation-rich and participation-driven meetings that don't suck, as he says. And he's also a recovering academic. His books include Conferences That Work, Creating Events That People Love, The Power of Participation, and Action Conferences That Work. So take a listen to our conversation and let us know what you think. So welcome, Adrian. We're here in front of this Untethered Conference. This is supposedly the end keynote, and I wanted to have a conversation with you. This is a little bit of a mashup of a couple of different concepts. When I was a kid, I did Outward Bound. I don't know how many people out there did Outward Bound, and it was one of the things that completely changed the way I thought about the world. My grades, actually, I was 11th grade. I did this 26-day Outward Bound course. My grades went from C's to A's following this course. There was something about what Outward Bound did. It was outdoor wilderness training. It was an amazing experience that gave me confidence as a kid and has been one of the things that has driven me through my entire life and that has made me sort of look at conflict and look at things I couldn't do and say, oh my God, maybe I can try that. And it also comes down to sort of that great Robert Kennedy quote. And we are in this moment, especially with what's going on in the world today, where we have to dream about why not? How do we change things? How do we do things? So this Outward Bound experience was really incredible. I want to bring you in on this discussion because you were one of the great innovators in meetings and facilitation. And I believe that facilitators and people that know how to be collaboration artists are going to be what is really important in the event industry and the meeting industry and the conference industry going forward. Why don't you say a few words about what are the things that you've developed over the years, and then we'll bring it back to the conversation that I'm having.
Well, I thank you, David, and thank you for the nice things you said about me. I also just want to add that I always enjoy working, talking with you so much. It's just, I really appreciate being invited in on this conversation. And I think, as some people know, I'm interested in creating meetings that are the best possible meeting for each person involved. I realized that I needed to create meetings that became, in real time, during the meeting, as much as possible, what the participants and the sponsors and all the stakeholders wanted. And that's driven my work ever since.
You developed the Unconference. I brought it into the popular culture.
Well, I can't say that. I didn't invent the word Unconference. Open Space was developed right around the same time. But Harrison Owen had the good fortune to write a book about it right away. And so Open Space, became sort of synonymous with Unconference. I didn't invent that word. And in some ways, I don't like it because I think conferences really should be about conferring. And unfortunately, as we all know, many conferences, traditional conferences, there's still too many people talking for long periods of time, and everybody else is listening.
With that said, I'm going to share my screen right now. One of the things I learned from Outward Bound, the lectures that we heard on the Rock for the morning meetings that were so inspirational when you watched the ocean and you actually hear people say inspirational things was the lessons of Ernest Shackleton. He was the guy that was caught in the Antarctic and had to take his crew and make them survive. One of the things I heard was all these great lessons. And I realized that, Ernest Shackleton really was what I call a collaboration artist, because you cannot be a leader today without collaborating in the best possible way. And I'm sure you agree with that as well, right, Adrian?
Of course, yes.
So collaboration arts are, people get bored at me talking about how collaboration arts are the key and are the future. This is just a little bit on Adrian and I want to go into the fact that Ernest Shackleton, what we will learn from Ernest Shackleton, he did leadership through collaboration. And event organizers and meeting planners and conference planners are all collaboration artists. I wanted to talk about a program that I created called Collaborate America.
With Collaborate America, we simply want to make artistic and smart collaboration a goal of everyone who purposely gathers people together, no matter what the reason. We want our culture to recognize collaboration artists in the same way that they have celebritized culinary figures and the risk takers of the startup world. We want collaboration artists to really be recognized.
Artful collaboration might be our most critical resource going forward in terms of the outcome of mankind. A collaboration artist knows how to bring people together, drive consensus, enroll people in a common mission, create ideas flow, and translate ideas into solutions. Imagine if artful collaboration were taught to children and seen by them as one of the most important skills to have. And so we are at this event to honor and learn from some of the greatest collaborators of our generation.
Artful collaboration not only represents an opportunity that's essential to our survival as a species. I think if you look at the level and the scope of the challenges that we're facing in the world today, how can we possibly solve those things without effective collaboration? The answer is that we can't. We all have a responsibility to do everything we can to build trust, build cooperation, and give people access to the brilliance that's in everyone's minds in the room.
So I believe that future events need to be more valuable than ever, that we can't waste people's time with badly produced or badly facilitated events. In theory, you don't want to go to an event if it's going to kill your grandmother. So with that said, I have this hypothesis that I want to share with you, Adrian, and you can beat me up on it, or you can fight it, or you can tell me what, I'm full of it. But the idea is that leaders today need to be collaboration artists. We're seeing that in our general leadership in the country. I put a picture of a president on there because I think that you need to have effective national leadership in order to solve problems. And that I also believe that event organizers use collaboration arts as their number one skill. Yes, it's great to have great food and beverage and great design and great this, but if people don't connect in the room and connect for a purpose, then why are they there? And so I believe that event organizing in person or virtual is a key leadership tool so that we cannot think of our industry as superfluous, but actually primary to help society. And that our survival skills, like what we're about to go into with Ernest Shackleton, depended on collaboration. And it depended on the leader respecting the people that he's leading and the leader listening to other people. So with that, I want to do a little bit on what Ernest Shackleton went through in a very brief period. There's lots of literature on what he did, and I'm going to talk about some of the takeaways that have been around for a few years.
The only thing I would like to add is that behind collaboration ultimately is connection. I mean, we as human beings need connection in our daily lives. Nearly all of us, needed this. The pandemic has brought this into sharp relief, and I see collaboration as the piece behind that. That's how you turn the desire for connection into the reality of the shared experience of the collaboration and connecting experience. And so collaboration is kind of the tool, but it meets this sort of fundamental need for connection around, and at meetings, the connection is always around something relevant to people, topics, issues, challenges that people currently have.
Setting sail from Plymouth on the 8th of August 1914, the Endurance became stuck in the ice floes before sinking in November 1915. With no chance of rescue, Shackleton planned a daring and dangerous rescue to sail a lifeboat to South Georgia. With 5 other crew, they launched the James Caird into the treacherous seas of the Antarctic, and against all the odds, they reached South Georgia. Then, having to trek across mountain ranges, they finally reached help on the 20th of May 1916, before rescuing his crew on the 30th of August, every one of them still alive.
So in this rock that I sat in front of in the morning and Outward Bound when I was 16 years old, the guy gets up and gives these 9 points, these 9 lectures that I've been actually living with in every part of my business, whether it's to survive to get to a crisis, whether it's to get through an event, it's whether to get through the day in my team. These are the 9 things that I think that everyone should think about in terms of how they are approaching the world. And the number 1 is never lose sight of the ultimate goal and focus on short-term objectives. So the idea is, how do you get through the day? How do you get to this next moment? How do you survive till tomorrow?
First of all, this is Simon Sinek's point about understanding your why. I mean, it can be your own personal why, it can be the why of a meeting, but once you have that clear, and sometimes it's really hard to get that. Simon Sinek, talked about that a lot, and he's right. And the corollary of it is that once you have that goal, it makes focusing on the short-term objectives to get it so much clearer. Once I realized that what I love to do in life is facilitate connection between people, in meetings, that drives everything I do. So that creates the short-term objectives that I then, sit down every day and say, what shall I do today?
This is a leadership fundamental that has been, between Simon Sinek and everyone else, this is kind of the main thing. Mm-hmm. So number 2, set a personal example with visible, memorable symbols of behavior. So when I go out and I lead a group of people, if I'm not in the game with them, they're not going to listen to me. If I'm not setting up sort of things that are goals and be smart about the behavior of the group, then you're going to lose people right away.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're amazing at that. I mean, I remember seeing you at meetings, and I don't think you're running a major event. I'm lucky enough to speak at it, and I see you at lunchtime, and I see you going around and creating conversations at every single table, with hundreds of people. And you're modeling behavior. You're saying, look, I'm doing this. I'm the leader of this event, but this is important. We're here to have conversations. You're setting up, you're modeling. And you can't expect people, for example, to take risks if you're not willing to, to show that you're willing to take risks too, or to be vulnerable about a situation that's difficult if you're not willing to do that too.
A leading events agency based in DC, Lindner has a global footprint. Since their founding in 1996, they have partnered with internationally recognized clients such as the Smithsonian Institute and the iconic National Cherry Blossom Festival to produce and manage innovative and experimental events that don't just engage, they inspire. To learn more about Lindner Global events, visit linderglobal.com.
I learned this when I was working at the State Department, and we had a big event for David Cameron, who was the Prime Minister. And I noticed that he got up and went to every single table, just like you do at a wedding or a bar mitzvah or any type of social. So I believe that CEOs have been terrible hosts lately, and they're not mirroring behavior. Or leaders are not. They're going to an event and they're not wearing their masks. So that is, to me, kind of an example of, you're not going to be with you. The person's not going to be with you if you don't know if you're in it. So instill optimism and self-confidence, but remain grounded in reality. You always have to be very optimistic, but at the same time, you've got to be realistic. And that is, when you see an event, we all know that behind the scenes of an event, things go wrong all the time. But at the same time, to the crowd, you got to say, okay, everything's going well, and you don't notice it, but you still know that you got to get that person off the stage because they're taking up too much time, or this is not going according to schedule. So you have to be on both sides of this, and this happens in every day with leadership all the time. But you have to make sure that you're being honest.
And this goes back to, the first point again. Not only do you have to know what your ultimate goal is, but you have to, believe in it and basically want it to happen. It has to be congruent with, who you are as a person. And if those two things are satisfied, then you're going to be optimistic about it. I mean, it's not like, yes, I know I'm going to succeed, but you'll be coming from that place where it's like, I think we can do this, and we're going to make it happen, to the best of our ability.
This is the tenet of most entrepreneurs, because most people say their ideas suck and they'll never be successful. And so you have to be optimistic and you have to be self-confident, but you have to know that cash flow is king. And so at some point, especially with what's going on today, you need to make sure, especially with what I'm seeing with entrepreneurs, their cash is running out. So they have to pivot, they have to do other things, but at the same time, they can't lose the optimism and the self-confidence. So the number 4 is take care of yourself, maintain your stamina, and let go of guilt. So the idea is make sure that you're in good health, that you are, instead of getting up every morning and just getting to work, that you should go do your meditation or get grounded. And also, if you make a decision and it's not popular, let go of the guilt. You cannot please everybody all the time.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think, this one is probably pretty self-evident to anyone who's been in the meeting industry for any length of time, because we all work incredibly hard preparing meetings, and then, of course, at the event itself. Letting go of guilt is very important because we do make mistakes. We're not perfect. And as you say, we can't satisfy anybody. You run a meeting of any size, and there are always going to be a few people who are like, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, and so on. And if you let that overcome the fact that 98% of the people had a great time, you're going to it's going to affect your effectiveness.
I've also heard stories today of people that have to let go people and furlough people, and you're making these awful decisions. But if you're mired in guilt, nothing will get done. Right. You have to get over that because there's just no way around it, because it's survival. Right. It literally is survival. So number 5 is reinforce the team message consistently. We are one, we live or die together. Now, this cannot be more true than today. It also cannot be more true in every event that we ever do, because we're managing teams and for short periods of time in some cases. Wearing that mask is saving other people's lives. Minimize staff differences. Insist on courtesy and mutual respect. The idea that when we set up processes, we've got to follow them. We have to make sure that there are protocols in place that allow us to create the discipline to have a day that works the way the last day worked in order to accomplish goals. And the idea of courtesy and respect is something that is just part of life. And this way, if people understand the rules, then there is a lot less problems with your team.
And again, this goes back to the modeling. Again, I mean, David, you epitomize courtesy. Every dealings I've had with you and seen you working with other people, you epitomize courtesy and mutual respect, and that's going to affect and influence the people that you're with.
I would say we're all not perfect. I'm certainly not perfect at this. But the idea is that we have to develop processes. So one of the things that I've actually done while in this situation where we're in tight quarters with other people is we're actually in a small group of people having a meeting every single day to figure out what we're planning on doing that day, so that there are certain norms that even in a very odd situation, you can actually rely on as to create a new reality in a sense. And I'm sure that Shackleton did that every single day in terms of making sure that his people were doing something on a regular basis. In fact, I know that. This is one that I use all the time. Master conflicts, engage dissidents, and avoid needless power struggles. My feeling is the minute you turn a blind eye to conflict, you're dead. That you have to confront it right away. It means making faster decisions. It means understanding what other people are thinking, to not get involved in the politics of the moment.
The piece of advice I really like in this is about engaging dissidents. It's something that I've learned over the years, facilitating and so on. You often have people who are like, no, I really disagree, and maybe they're in a minority, and you have to make a decision and so on. The most important thing you can do in those situations is make sure that those dissidents feel heard. Okay, you need to really listen to them. You may not agree with them. You may not end up doing what they want, but if they feel heard, we all know that we don't always get our way in everything that we want. But if you feel heard, if they feel heard, they're much more likely to, not harbor resentment and to say, okay, I guess I don't agree, but majority thinks we should do this, and we'll see what, and I'll go along with it. And then you've de-escalated a potential conflict that otherwise could last for a long time.
Can you go through? I know I've learned from you, which you're a tremendous mentor to me on this kind of stuff, and how you do it in a public space. You were able to have these techniques where you're allowing people of different opinions to actually be heard, and give one example of something that kind of works.
Well, you can have one of my favorite techniques is what I use when you want to have an actual genuine discussion, and you've got maybe hundreds of people in the room. There's no way that you're going to be able to hear from everybody. And you also don't want the discussion to be dominated by people who just want to talk all the time and shut up. And I use something called Fishbowl for that, which allows people to have their say, because anyone can come up and speak at any time in Fishbowl. But it also, the social dynamics of it, of the rules, which are very simple, which are explained at the start, make it almost impossible for even someone who would love to hog the spotlight from staying in the spotlight for longer than a reasonable amount of time. Again, I refer people to my books and articles about Fishbowl. It's one of the things I've mentioned, but that's a simple example of how to engage dissidents, but not let them take over.
And because this is a skill. This is not just let's just go, put yourself in a burning fire, running into a burning building. You need to know how to do this. So that
you need to know how to do it. But the interesting thing is, that I've taught Fishbowl. I mean, I don't know how many thousands or tens of thousands of people I've run Fishbowl with, and some of those people take it and they see how well it works, and then they take it and go on. It's not like I'm the only person who can, I'm a master facilitator. I'm the only person who can do this. A large number of people are perfectly capable of being part of a Fishbowl and saying, "Oh, I see how that works. Oh, that was great. I liked how that worked. I'm going to try that in my place of business or organization." And they can do it just as well as I can.
Okay, so here is the one that I believe is at the heart of what many people do, other than people that are just hosting meetings and things like that, when we have events. The idea is what Shackleton said, he didn't say this particularly, but this is what people brought out of it, is that you always have to find something to celebrate and something to laugh about. And the idea is, even when Wuhan opened up a few weeks ago, even though it was precarious, they had an event to celebrate the opening of Wuhan. They did video mapping of all the buildings. If you see some of the videos on YouTube, it's pretty incredible how our industry is part of leadership. And so when I see the idea of celebrating something, every major leader in the world knows that they have to do something when they achieve a goal. They need to pat people on the back. They need to show that they're caring about all the work that someone has done to create the end of the mission. And also to be human and to laugh and to show emotion. Because I think emotion, especially positive emotion, brightens up everyone's day. Yeah, and I also think what's happening every day in New York City at 5 o'clock, when people are getting on their balconies and applauding. They've been doing that in Italy and in France and other places. Our business is the business of leadership. And that is why it cannot be minimized. And that is why it is more important than anybody could imagine. I always used to say that in our industry for years, we were sitting at the children's table for Thanksgiving. And I believe that we are so much at the adult table from a strategic perspective that every major leader, when you see President Obama give a speech like he did the other night, when you see the leaders of the world at ceremonial events, that's all about celebrating something. And that's all sort of such a key part of what we do. So we cannot minimize our efforts in this world and why what we do in the event, meeting, festival business is so important.
The last thing that I have well, actually, it's two more things. Be willing to take the big risk. Now, everybody's, in every event that you have, it's, what are we going to do next year? What are we going to do to make this different? And a lot of people fall back on, we did it this year, so let's just do it again next year. The idea of moving to an unconference or to changing the way things are structured, to confront people in a little more different ways. We have to be thinking about this every day, because what we do is events an ephemeral moment. So we have to create new ephemeral moments all the time. So risk-taking is part of what we do. And everything that Adrian does in different techniques is risk-taking in massive ways. We want to talk about some of the things that you've seen and how people have changed through that type of big risk-taking.
Well, I think I want to acknowledge you first, David, because I see you, again, as a epitome of a risk taker. And the big risk. I mean, what is a big risk to one person may be a small risk to someone else. The issue is that the crucial word is risk, because every single person has a particular level at which they say, well, this is a risk for me, and it won't be the same for someone else. I think, but again, you throughout your career, building BizBash and all the things you've done. I mean, you have all these creative ideas, and you're willing to try them out all the time. You try things, and just like me, I try new things all the time. Some of them don't work.
Lots of them don't work.
Lots of them don't work. But I think also it's the continued risk taking. I mean, when I started running meetings 30 years ago, I was terrified about being out on stage. This is a common thing. And it's not like, one day I wasn't terrified anymore. It was like I went out and took that risk every day, and eventually, it got better. I like to try new things, and I learn at every meeting I do. I learn new things, and I try to import them, and I have ideas, and I try them, and sometimes they don't work, but that's how you learn.
There's one more that I left out, and that is always there is another move. And to me, that is one of the most important things, especially with today, with so many people who are seeing their businesses completely falling apart. The idea of pivoting to always make another move. There's always a way. And the way you up your game and survive and thrive is to be accompanied and see what's going on out there in the world. And one of the things we've done through BizBash was to allow people to peek over the fence to see what other people are doing. And when you see what other people you're doing, you say, I can do that. I have a better idea than that. So everything that we talked about today is here to make you think. And we want to make sure that this address today is for you to think about your future and to put yourself through your own outward bound experience and get the confidence that you can do anything. Because believe me, once you get through this, there's not one thing that you will not be able to do. Adrian, do you have any final comments?
No, except that I think you've covered things beautifully. I've really enjoyed my time talking to you. And I love, this kind of spontaneous conversations that we've had from time to time, and what it brings forth. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. And I encourage people to go read all of Adrian's books. And of course, I encourage everyone to go look at BizBash every day. You never know where we're going to be going. The world is changing radically. You want to see new ideas? We got new ideas for you. We're in the age of innovation. Yes, we want to be safe, but it is remarkable how people are innovating and changing the world every single day. And we want to be a part of that. And that is our mission. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.